Welcome to CyberSync and Unpatched. With me today, I have two very distinguished guests here. We're going to talk about insider threats in the age of AI and AI tools and such. So, please.
Hi, I'm Brian Wilgar O'Neill. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Harmonic Security, and we're a company that's helping organizations adopt Gen AI and accelerate that with guardrails around governance and risk.
Brilliant. Welcome.
I'm Joseph Ross. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre. We are a police-led initiative to support SMEs with their cyber resilience and take responsibility for taking their cyber resilience seriously. My background is in AI, so very interesting discussion we're about to have on AI and implications of unauthorised use of it within an organisation.
Good to have you both here with me. I'm Henrik Kinstedt. I run a management consultancy. I also are the Chief Revenue Officer for a company called CoolSpan. So, Brian, these insider threats, how is this being redefined in this age of AI? And how has this impacted the industry?
I think it's I go back to like when I first used Gen AI tools, how exciting they were, how useful they were, and I use them every day in my day-to-day work because they're so effective at making you more efficient about your job. I think that's probably standard across all of the industry. So I think with increased usage of those tools, because it's so great for the employees, you basically have more reason to put data out there that you might not be worrying about. So you might have in the past you'd have to be explicitly trying to put data in different places or take it out or do something bad to the organization, but now it's kind of more, I think it's changed fundamentally to be more, the data's just flown out because the employees they want to use those tools, they want to get it out there.
Yeah, certainly. It's not about necessarily insider threat in the sense of malicious insider threat,
No.
but it's still an insider threat in the sense that you can leak data, I guess.
Yeah.
It's sort of...
And I think it's kind of combined as well with the sort of like, I guess during the kind of pandemic, there was a lot more remote working. So it's like remote working plus Gen AI usage feels like you've got a bigger spread of potential of insider threats because you haven't got the controls that you used to have within organizations.
Oh, Joseph, what's your take?
Yeah, so insider threats, you've got people using generative AI tools every day for their productivity, and to get the most value out of those tools, they're pumping data into the tools. So the tool can understand what the parameter of whatever they're using it for is, to the best extent that it can give the most appropriate output. If you fully anonymize everything you're doing before it goes into a Gen AI tool, that's really time intensive, and that's sort of the point of Gen AI is we're reducing the amount of time tasks take, not increasing it. But then also, the outcome will be less effective because it won't be applied to the problem. And then that extrapolates the problem hugely because we're pushing intensive, potentially secure data that we're not supposed to be sharing into these tools. Now, that's one thing when an organization has come up with a policy around how we use AI and tools that we're supposed to use, but it's an entirely other thing if individuals within an organization are making their own mind around what tools they're using.
So I guess from both of you, my take is that it's more about user mistakes than malice. Is that a fair assumption? I guess we still have the other odd, but...
I think that's fair, and I think also like organizations are also leaning into AI. So like I think they want to use more AI. If you're not using lots of AI in your business in a year's time, 5 years' time, then you're going to be behind. So I think they need to kind of push forward with it, but it does bring an increased risk of things that what we just described happening.
I wanted to ask you, today it's almost impossible to avoid AI. It's embedded in tools, it's embedded in programs, and sometimes you do that. So in this world, I know you're very into this shadow IT and shadow AI. How does that impact the work you do and how you look at this?
Yeah, I think like at Harmonic we track I think about 6,000 AI apps, and that number's growing all the time. And I think that's it. Like there's niche tools, there's like loads of great tools that are specific on specific use cases. Like if you want to build a slide deck, if you want to do coding, etc. There's new AI tools coming out every day for those. And then you've got obviously your big players like your ChatGPTs, your Geminis, etc. And then you've got probably tools coming out of like places where organizations in the West at least don't want their data gone, like in China or Russia, etc. And I think that currently a lot of organizations don't have any visibility into where they don't have that shadowy eye, where some marketing might have all started using a new tool and no one in the organization knows it. They can't track it. It's too quick. It's coming out too quick to put it on a list and track. Yeah.
And you mentioned whether insider threats malicious. On that side, the insider, I'd say usually not, but there can be malicious actors acting outside of that environment, where a actor would shell up a version of something like DeepSeek. They'd make it look great and they'd target it for a specific individual or team within an organization. And if the organizational culture is innovation first, drive results, don't really care how you do it, people are, that's how they get promotions and bonuses, to get the best tools and use the best tools to get the best work. So if they're then being socially engineered to use a specific tool, but that's just a reshelled version of DeepSeek, everything you put into that tool goes to that hostile actor. And we don't know who they are, the organization doesn't know who they are, and if you've got no way of tracking that, that is a data breach for everything you've got. But not just going out into the wide world, going out to a specific organization that's targeting you, and we just don't know how that data could be used.
So, from an academic point of view, I know you're interested in that. So the sort of shadow AI, how is this getting, defined in the academics today? Because it's a new field.
Absolutely. So it's building on shadow IT, which has been a terminology that's been thrown around for quite a few years of unauthorized use of technology. And a really good example of that is we as an organization use Microsoft 365, but a team sharing files with customers and they find it a little bit clunky, so they use Dropbox instead. Now, Dropbox is an approved tool for lots of companies, but it's not approved for that company, so that would be shadow IT. The challenge comes in if instead of using Dropbox, you're using something weird and wonderful, and that could be insecure, and that could be the leak. With AI, we've got the same issue, but lots more people are using it every day for absolutely everything. So the amount of data we're putting in is absolutely huge and immense. So it's that unauthorized use of technology without appreciating where that data is going. Data management, whoever the DPO is, they've got no idea where that data is going. So data strategy goes out the window.
We did a research report for Q1 this year, and across all our customer base, I think the average was like 254 Gen AI tools per company. So there's some more, some less than that, and they're kind of, and that's a mixture of like well known stuff like you mentioned, kind of your Dropbox type things. There's also some weird and wonderful. I can't remember what name of one was, but there was one that I was looking at recently, and it was like a new coding tool, but it was like a very niche, and there wasn't many people using it, but there was at least like 1% of your organization has decided that this is a good tool for them, and they've just started using it, and the security team had no idea whatsoever that it was being used.
I think that's a really, really key point, is that we don't want to stop people using innovative tools. We want people to do well, but it's that extra level of due diligence that the organization needs to take to review what tools are being used. And if that's not streamlined, people are going to go away and do their own thing. So we need to have organizations taking responsibility for that due diligence, checking tools.
Would you say that security policies, I mean, you talk to a lot of organizations and so do you, security policies, compliance and so on, is it catching up? Because this is obviously sort of almost taking people a bit, wow, well, yeah, we need to address this on both privacy policy, security policy, and compliance. Is it catching up?
I think everyone we talk to has got a policy, but they don't read it. The employees don't read it. There's no controls around it. So I think like
It's the culture.
it's like how do you if you've got remote Gen AI built workforce or even a hybrid workforce, how do you go about, I guess, the education and building that culture? I think one of our kind of things we have internally, we keep talking about, is like meeting the user where they are. So instead of going like, here's your yearly Gen AI course, go tick the box around kind of your policies, etc. We are, whenever we're working on anything in our product, it's like, how do we How do we tell someone and educate them at the point of time of data loss, or at the point of time where they go to use DeepSeek and it's not approved? So, and I think that's our view. It might not be everyone's view of how you build up that sort of actual compliance and actual culture and education, rather than, I guess, your traditional means of we'll write a policy, we'll do some training sessions. Like that feels so anarchic that it's not gonna. Not gonna.
When it comes to security, what people are actually doing is so much more important than what they're told to do. Because if they're not doing what they're told to do, you can't rely on the policy. The policy can be great, but if no one's adhering to it, it's not worth the paper it's written on. Yeah.
100%. We touched base on that yesterday. We talked about compliance and all the new compliances, and just because you're compliant, are you secure? So that we touched base on that yesterday, and I would say this is applicable here too. I mean,
Yeah, definitely. I think compliance is important, but it's like, what's the organization actually doing on the ground? Really, I think that's, and also like, why are you? It probably goes back to something you talked about, the threats. It's like, why do you care to an extent? Like, what's the risk to the business? So I think there's a dual thing of, if businesses don't adopt Gen AI, there's a risk to the business because they probably will get overtaken or lose market share or whatnot. And then if they do approve that, then what's the appropriate controls that they want to put in place? And I think just now a lot of organizations are struggling to understand what controls. Like we talked about shadow AI. Like if a new app comes out tomorrow, then what did he do about that? Did he block that app? Like, is that a good thing? Are they going to have someone review every single app that's used in the organization? I think I think we have to be a bit more dynamic and contextual around kind of the risk level, is my view.
but even then, I mean, you have to pretty much quit your whole suite today, don't you? Because it's built into your apps today. So the option is probably not to say we don't use IT anymore, because it's going to be hard to avoid, I guess.
I think we talked to a lot of people, and there's probably like 70% of them who are still in a block first mode, but they kind of know they can't live there forever. And the other 30%, when we first meet them, we call it YOLO mode. They're more like, we don't have any controls, but we'd rather have that than block first. But they're still worried because they understand there's a risk and they need to do something about it. But I think it's going to be interesting in the next 6 to 12 months where it progresses.
There needs to be a middle ground. If we want to enhance innovation, people need to be able to explore new tools. But having an internal process where if you want to explore a new tool, you're not allowed to put any real data in. So if you're experimenting, seeing what a tool can do, you start using it with complete dummy data, just seeing what it does, seeing if it's useful, if you think it's got legs. And then if it does, then put it through a due diligence process. Because as you say, we don't want to test every single tool and get everything vetted, because that's just resource intensive. But if we can have a process of letting people have a bit of a play with different tools, find out what works and what doesn't, but without divulging any sensitive information, and then have that process to upgrade it. Right, okay, now this can have marketing data. Right, this can now have contract and legal information. And then you can go through and have that process of what you're allowed to use certain tools for. And at the bottom layer, you can do anything with any of these tools as long as you're in a secure shell browser that's out of the way. So you can't get any malicious elements through it, but you can test and innovate internally.
I mean, I think this subject, I could definitely sit here an hour and talk about it more. We are coming to the end. So with that, I wanted to ask you to look a little bit into the future. How do you see this developing, say on the both short and the medium term, Brian? What's your forecast?
Oh, geez. I think that puts put me on the spot, but I think I was talking to someone yesterday and they were like, what's your like 5-year roadmap? And I'm like, we don't have a 5-year roadmap because
It's moving so fast.
it's moving so fast. So like we have like a 3-month product roadmap on purpose, like by choice, because things are changing. I think it's going to be interesting what happens when I think there's been chat about like agentic AI for the last 6 months, but I don't think enterprise is really using it yet. So I think it's going to be interesting where that falls. And I think one of the interesting things for me there is around, like, a lot of times the current agentic stuff, it does it based on the same permissions as the user who's running it. So if you've got your chief engineer who's got access to all your systems and you run your agentic AI, it generally runs as that person. And I think it's going to be interesting how that works and whether we end up having a kind of have to have like identities and permissions and policies around agents. So you have groups of agents with certain identities. I think that so you've got like if you think about someone leaking data or kind of like insider threats, they might not even know they're doing it. They're just trying to get their work done, and it's not like they're putting data into a tool. It's that they're kicking off a workflow, but the AI pulls production data instead of staging data or test data and puts it somewhere else, and the employee's none the wiser. So I think like I'm probably not just saying it's going to get worse, but I think I think it's going to be interesting how agents and agentic AI what that does to this issue. And I think that's a bit unstable yet. I think it's not clear what route that's going to go in. But that's going to be a hard problem. It's just going to get harder to have the governance around it.
Joseph.
Well, in our latest paper, we proposed a classification model of how we look at shadow AI and how it's used. And I think that really is the first step, or the next step, is businesses and organizations taking responsibility for the fact that they are using AI and they're using it all the time. And actually, rather than burying your head in the sand and letting people do good work because it's getting good outcomes, start reviewing how AI is being used, where it's being used, and what we're allowed to put into it. And I think once we start classifying that data and those tools we're using, we can move forward and continue to innovate with agentic AI and whatever's next.
My own take is that I think I hereby claim the AIoT. I think that's going to be the big thing for the future. So AI for of things. Because when you're talking about, as you said, agentic, when actually machines start to talk about with machines, and you tell them, I want you to trust that AI, and then they start to talk about each other. How do we regulate that? That's, we're not even involving humans anymore. So when the API becomes a chat, so you ask then, and it answers, and then all of a sudden humans say, I want that AI to trust that AI. How do you regulate that? How do you control that? That's going to be a very interesting future to look into as well. Hint for you guys there.
Yeah. We're thinking about it.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian, for coming.
Cheers. Thank
you. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you.